The Lincoln-Kennedy penny, also known as the Lincoln-Kennedy coincidences, is a popular piece of American folklore that draws intriguing connections between the lives and deaths of President Abraham Lincoln and President John F. Kennedy. These connections are often considered coincidences or urban legends and are not tied to any actual coin minted by the U.S. Treasury. The idea centers on the astonishingly similar circumstances surrounding both presidents' lives, political careers, and assassinations, which some people find eerie and mysterious. The concept of the Lincoln-Kennedy coincidences dates back to the mid-1960s, shortly after the assassination of John F. Kennedy in 1963. An unknown author compiled a list of supposed coincidences between the two presidents and circulated it widely. The list became popular as it was published in newspapers, magazines, and books, and it quickly became a staple of American pop culture. Despite its popularity, there is no physical Lincoln-Kennedy penny. The term is used metaphorically to discuss these coincidences. Several specific coincidences are often cited to illustrate the similarities between Lincoln and Kennedy. Here are some of the most famous ones. Election to Congress and presidency. Abraham Lincoln was elected to Congress in 1846, while John F. Kennedy was elected to Congress in 1946, exactly 100 years later. Lincoln was elected president in 1860, and Kennedy in 1960, another 100-year gap. Vice presidents. Both Lincoln and Kennedy had vice presidents named Johnson. Lincoln's vice president was Andrew Johnson, who was born in 1808, and Kennedy's vice president was Lyndon B. Johnson, born in 1908, exactly 100 years apart. Assassination. Both presidents were assassinated on a Friday, while seated next to their wives. Lincoln was shot at Ford's Theater, and Kennedy was shot while riding in a Lincoln Continental, a car made by the Ford Motor Company. Successors. The men who succeeded both Lincoln and Kennedy were named Johnson, Andrew Johnson and Lyndon B. Johnson. Both were Southern Democrats, and both had previously served in the U.S. Senate. Assassin names and fate. Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth, who was born in 1839. Kennedy was assassinated by Lee Harvey Oswald, born in 1939, 100 years apart. Both assassins were killed before their trials. Family losses. Both presidents lost children while in the White House. Lincoln lost his son Willie in 1862, and Kennedy lost his infant son Patrick in 1963. While the coincidences are indeed fascinating, many of them are superficial and easily explained by the nature of history and probability. For instance, there are only a limited number of days in a week, so it is not particularly surprising that both assassinations occurred on a Friday. Similarly, the name Johnson is common, and the fact that both successors had that last name is not necessarily significant. Furthermore, some of the coincidences are not as exact as they seem. For example, John Wilkes Booth was actually born in 1838, not 1839, and the details of the assassinations and subsequent events are more complex than the list suggests. The list of coincidences often leaves out differences and contrasting details, focusing only on those points that align neatly. Despite the fact that many of these coincidences are either stretched or trivial, the Lincoln-Kennedy coincidences have had a lasting impact on American culture. They have been used in various forms of media, including books, television shows, and movies, to illustrate how history can sometimes appear to repeat itself. The fascination with these coincidences reflects a broader human tendency to find patterns and connections in unrelated events. It also underscores a cultural interest in the mysterious and the unexplained, even when such mysteries are debunked upon closer inspection. The Lincoln-Kennedy coincidences serve as an example of how people are drawn to patterns and conspiracy theories. In this case, the coincidences are harmless and mostly used for entertainment, but they reflect a psychological phenomenon known as apophenia, the tendency to perceive meaningful connections between unrelated things. In a broader context, these coincidences can also reflect societal feelings about the randomness of life and the human need to find order in chaos. After traumatic events like the assassinations of beloved leaders, people often search for meaning and explanations that go beyond the surface facts. The Lincoln-Kennedy penny and the coincidences associated with it are an intriguing part of American folklore. While most of these coincidences are superficial or the result of selective attention, they continue to capture the imagination of people who are fascinated by the strange and mysterious aspects of history. In the end, the Lincoln-Kennedy coincidences tell us more about our own psychology and cultural narratives than they do about any deep connection between the two presidents. They remind us of our innate desire to find patterns and meanings in the world around us, even when those patterns may not exist.